The call came through while I was closing a client file. The kind of quiet Tuesday afternoon that usually meant nothing could touch me. My calendar was color-coded, my inbox under control, my future measured in clean lines and careful steps. I almost let the number go to voicemail. Miss Lowell, this is Michael Reynolds from the bank. I'm calling regarding a delinquency notice. The word delinquency landed wrong, like a misfiled document in an otherwise perfect stack. My fingers stilled over the keyboard. The office around me kept breathing, phones ringing, printers humming while something in my chest tightened. He continued evenly, explaining that several payments on a mortgage had been missed. Not mine. Apparently, my sister's. There was a pause on the line, the kind that comes before bad news. Michael clarified that the property was located at 87 Briarwood Lane in Westport, Connecticut, and that I was listed as a non-occupant co-signer. My chair scraped softly against the floor as I leaned back. That address belonged to Isabella. I had toured the house once, smiled politely, and driven home, relieved it wasn't my responsibility. That relief evaporated. The mortgage was 4 months past due. The total outstanding amount stood at $28,500. The paperwork, processed 9 months earlier, had been submitted in person by my parents. Air moved in and out of my lungs, steady but shallow. Michael offered to send the documents immediately. Before ending the call, his voice lowered just enough to signal concern. He advised me to review everything carefully. The email arrived seconds later. Before opening it, I want to be clear about one thing. The story in the video is a creative work by Revenge, since all characters and events are fictional, crafted to convey a humanistic message and the values of family. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, then clicked. The signature at the bottom looked like mine from a distance. Up close, it unraveled. The shape of the letters, the hesitation in the stroke, it wasn't just wrong. It was careless. My phone vibrated again. A text from my mother lit up the screen. Cheerful and perfectly timed. Dinner tonight. Your father's making lasagna. The irony almost made me laugh. Instead, I forwarded the documents to Charles Bennett, the one person I trusted to tell me the truth, even if it hurt. A short message followed. I think my family forged my signature. The reply came fast. Do nothing yet. I'm leaving my office now. I closed my laptop and looked around the room I had built piece by piece. Everything still stood exactly where it belonged. That was the most unsettling part. If you're listening to this story and you've ever been told you were the strong one, stay with me. Sometimes strength isn't what they praise. Sometimes it's what they take. The elevator doors slid shut as I stepped inside, carrying proof that my life, at least the one I thought I had already been rewritten without my consent. Charles arrived faster than I expected, jacket still unbuttoned, eyes already scanning the document on my screen as if it might bite him. That's not subtle, came the verdict after a minute. His finger hovered over the signature line. Your mother didn't even try to slow her hand. My throat tightened as I leaned closer. From a distance, the letters passed. Up close, the flaws screamed, the looping tail on the K. The pressure break halfway through my last name. Habits I'd trained out of my writing years ago. That curl, I murmured. She's had it since college. Charles closed the laptop gently, like shutting a door on something dangerous. The bigger issue isn't the handwriting. A folder slid across the desk. I hadn't noticed him pull it out. These projections, he continued, tapping the page, they're not based on your current salary. They're betting on where you'll be. The numbers blurred together, but one phrase stayed sharp: anticipated equity partner compensation. My stomach dropped. They used my future, escaped my lips before I could stop it. Charles nodded once. They monetized your trajectory. My phone lit up again. This time it wasn't a text. Mom's name filled the screen. Charles tilted his head. Silent but clear. Answer. I accepted the call. Her voice flowed in warm and practiced. Sweetheart, are you still at work? Your father's worried you'll miss dinner. The normalcy felt obscene. I just spoke with a bank about Bella's house. A beat. Too long. Anne recovered quickly. Oh, that. We meant to explain. Explain how my name ended up on a mortgage I never agreed to. The breath on the other end sharpened. You know how difficult it's been for your sister. That doesn't answer anything. Edward's voice replaced hers, firmer, annoyed. Lower your tone. This was about stability. For who? A pause followed, heavy with calculation. Bella needed help. You were always the strong one. The words landed with terrifying ease, like they'd been rehearsed for years. Charles leaned forward, eyes hard, silently urging patience. So you forged my signature. I pressed, voice steadier than I felt. You tied my credit and my career to her debt. Anne tried again, softer this time. Families don't keep score. They don't commit fraud either. Silence swallowed the line. Then, Edward again, clipped and cold. Come to dinner. We'll talk this through. The call ended without goodbye. Charles exhaled slowly. They aren't panicking. No, I whispered. They planned. He met my gaze. Then we assume this isn't the only thing they touched. I looked back at the signature, at the future they'd already spent. Dinner waited untouched on my kitchen counter. I didn't go. Instead, I stood by the window with my phone in hand, watching the screen light up again and again, my mother, then my father, then Bella. I answered on the fourth vibration. Anne's voice arrived soft and careful, the tone she used when she wanted something without asking for it. You scared us today. Why would you call the bank like that? I didn't call them. They called me. A pause followed, short but telling. This didn't need to become official. Official was the moment my name went on a mortgage. Edward cut in, sharp and impatient. You're overreacting. This was a temporary solution, for a loan I didn't agree to. Anne rushed to fill the space. Bella was on the edge. The house was the one good thing she had going, and you decided I'd hold it up. Silence stretched. Then Edward again. Slower now. Deliberate. You have the income. You have the stability. You always land on your feet. The words felt familiar, worn smooth by years of repetition. I didn't offer to carry her debt. You didn't need to, Anne replied. Your family. I laughed once, short and dry. Family doesn't forge signatures. Edward's breath sharpened on the line. Watch how you talk to us. Watch what you did to me. Anne shifted tactics, lowering her voice. Sweetheart, don't make this something it isn't. We protected you from stress, from responsibility. You tied my future earnings to a house I don't live in. That house is an investment, Edward insisted. It's appreciating. This isn't reckless. Charles stood a few steps away, arms crossed, saying nothing, his silence louder than any interruption. Tell me the truth, I pressed. How much is she behind? Anne hesitated too long. A few months. Spell it out. 4, Edward admitted. The total is $28,500. We were handling it. With my name. Anne tried again, emotion edging into her voice. You've always been so capable. We never worried about you. That wasn't care, I replied quietly. That was permission. Bella's voice broke in suddenly, tight and defensive. I never asked for this. You signed the papers. I reminded her. They told me it was taken care of. By stealing from me, Anne gasped. How can you say that? Because that's what it is. Edward's tone hardened. You're choosing law over blood. I'm choosing truth over lies. Another silence fell, heavier than the last. Anne spoke again, slower, careful. If you push this, you'll destroy your sister. No, I answered, feeling something settle inside me. You already did. You just used me to delay it. The call ended without resolution, but the balance had shifted. They knew it. I knew it. Charles finally spoke, voice low and steady. They aren't sorry. I looked at my phone, at the missed calls stacking up like evidence. They never thought they needed to be. If you're still listening, don't turn away now. This is the part where the truth stops being abstract and starts asking for a price. The credit report loaded slowly, line by line, like it was deciding how much truth I could handle at once. Charles stood behind me, close enough that I could feel the tension in his shoulders. Start with the cards, his voice urged, controlled but tight. The first account appeared, not mine, opened under my name, mailed to my parents' address, then another, then a personal loan, approved with documentation I had never seen. My hands went cold. That one, Charles noted, pointing at the screen. That's not casual debt. That's structured. How much? I breathed. He didn't rush the answer. Between the cards, the loan, and the mortgage exposure, you're sitting just under $800,000. The number pressed into my chest, heavy and real. $800,000 tied to decisions I never made. And this, he added, scrolling further, is the part that worries me most. A familiar account number surfaced. My investment account. The one I'd built slowly, carefully. Every bonus weighed against risk. It's listed as collateral, he explained. Someone pledged it to secure another obligation. That's impossible, escaped my lips. I never authorized that. Charles's expression didn't soften. Authorization exists, just not from you. My phone buzzed on the desk, vibrating against the wood like it wanted to be noticed. Bella's name flashed again. I turned it face down. They didn't just borrow your name, Charles continued. They built a safety net around it. For her. For themselves. The screen refreshed, revealing dates. The pattern was undeniable. Each account opened within weeks of one another, each timed after my performance reviews. After conversations about advancement I'd never shared at home. They were watching, I murmured. Yes, he confirmed. And planning. A knock interrupted us. Julia Rosen stepped inside without ceremony. Laptop already open. Eyes sharp and assessing. Charles made the introduction brief. She specializes in financial forensics, he explained. If there's more, she'll find it. Julia leaned over my shoulder, scanning fast. There's always more. Her fingers moved quickly, pulling transaction histories, linking accounts. Your sister's spending spikes around specific dates. What dates? Charity dinners, yacht club events, fundraisers tied to your parents' social circle? I swallowed. She was keeping up appearances. No, Julia corrected. She was supporting a narrative. My phone vibrated again. This time I picked it up. Anne's message filled the screen. Please stop this. You're hurting your family. I handed the phone to Charles without comment. Julia glanced at it, unimpressed. They're worried because systems are involved now. That's exactly why we keep going. Charles replied. We don't confront them again. We document. I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the decision settle. Then we trace everything. Julia closed her laptop with finality. Good, because what you see here isn't the damage. It's just the surface. I looked back at the screen, at the accounts layered over my name, my future, my silence. If you're listening and something here feels familiar, don't ignore that feeling. This is where the truth stops being deniable and starts demanding attention. Julia didn't look up when she spoke, fingers moving fast across her keyboard. Your sister's spending isn't random. Charles leaned against the desk, arms folded. Define not random. Every major purchase lines up with a social event. Julia continued. Harbor Point galas, donor dinners, fundraisers your parents host or attend. The screen turned toward me. Dates, Amounts. Patterns so clean they felt intentional. She wasn't just buying things, I murmured. She was showing something. Julia nodded. She was performing success. For your parents' audience? The words sank slowly. Bella's designer bags. The spa weekends. The quiet confidence she'd worn lately. None of it had been about comfort. It had been about credibility. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Bella or my father. Anne's name appeared, followed by a message that felt carefully drafted. Can we talk? Just us? I hesitated, then replied with a single word. Fine. She arrived an hour later, posture perfect, face composed, eyes already scanning the room. Her gaze landed on Julia, then Charles, and finally on me. I didn't expect an audience. You asked to talk. I replied. This is where I am. Anne's lips pressed together before she sat. You're taking this too far. Julia didn't look up. Charles didn't move. You went behind our backs. Anne continued. You involved outsiders. You forged my signature. Her shoulders stiffened. We did what parents do. We protected our family. You protected Bella. Anne leaned forward, lowering her voice. She was drowning. You've never needed us the way she does. The familiar line again, delivered softer this time, like it was meant to soothe instead of wound. You used my name to keep her afloat. And it worked. Anne replied quickly. The house stabilized. People stopped asking questions. People like your friends at the yacht club. Her eyes flickered, just for a second. Julia finally looked up. Those friends invested based on appearances. Appearances your daughter financed. Anne turned sharply. You don't know anything about our private matters. I know enough, Julia answered calmly. And I'm still finding more. Anne's gaze snapped back to me. If Bella loses that house, it will be because you chose to make this public. The room went quiet. Charles shifted slightly, ready to intervene. I raised a hand, stopping him. No, I replied evenly. She'll lose it because you tied it to fraud. Anne's composure cracked. Just a hairline fracture. You're punishing her to prove a point. I'm refusing to lie for you. Her voice softened, desperation bleeding through. You've always been able to handle more than the rest of us. Why can't you handle this? That wasn't strength, I answered. That was convenience. Anne stood abruptly. You're going to regret this. Regret would have been letting it continue. She paused at the door, back straight, chin lifted. If this goes further, you won't just hurt us. You'll destroy everything we built. I didn't flinch. You already destroyed it. I just stopped pretending not to see. Anne left without another word. Julia closed her laptop slowly. That confirms it. Confirms what? Charles asked. That this was never just about a house. She replied, it was about maintaining a story. And stories like that usually cost other people a lot of money. I looked at the empty doorway, then back at the screen filled with transactions. Names, dates. Then we follow the story, I said quietly. All the way to the end. If you're still listening, don't look away now. This is where family loyalty turns into a choice, and not everyone makes the right one. Julia's voice carried a different weight this time, lower and sharper. There's something else. Charles looked up immediately. Define something else. She turned the laptop toward us. On the screen sat a resume formatted cleanly, professionally. My education, my clerkship, my bar admission. Only the name at the top was wrong. Bella's. My stomach dropped. That's mine. Yes, Julia confirmed. Your law degree, your licensing details. She changed the name and the graduation year by 1 digit, enough to avoid a casual check. Charles exhaled slowly. Where did this come from? Background screening databases, Julia explained. She's applied to compliance roles, financial services. One firm moved her to a second interview. The room felt smaller, tighter. That's not just fraud, Charles noted. That's identity theft with professional exposure and reputational risk, Julia added. If she'd been hired and made a mistake, it would trace back to you. My phone buzzed, vibrating against the desk like a warning. Bella's name. I answered. Her voice came in strained, defensive. They told me you were blowing this out of proportion. They told you to use my credentials. A sharp inhale followed. I didn't think it mattered. It's the same knowledge. It's not the same license. She rushed ahead, words tumbling. I just needed something stable. Mom said you'd understand. She said a lot of things. Bella's tone hardened. You always have options. I don't. You took mine. Silence followed. Then something colder crept in. If this gets reported, I'm finished. You finished yourself. The call ended abruptly. Charles rubbed a hand over his face. That changes everything. Julia nodded. This crosses into criminal impersonation. If the Bar Association finds this first, the damage will be severe, even if you're cleared. As if summoned by the thought, my phone lit up again. This time it was an internal calendar update. Partnership review postponed. No explanation. No apology. They're distancing, Charles observed quietly. I know. Another message followed, this one from a client liaison. A contract paused. Pending review. Julia closed the laptop. Your sister didn't just gamble with your credit. She gambled with your identity. And my parents let her. Charles met my eyes. We stopped playing defense? What does that look like? It looks like documentation, timelines, and preemptive disclosure. We go to the bank before they spin it. We prepare for ethics review before rumors start. And Bella, Julia's expression didn't soften. She becomes part of the record. I nodded slowly, the decision settling into place. Then we make it official. Charles straightened. Once this moves forward, there's no walking it back. I stopped walking it back the moment they spent my future. Julia gathered her files. I'll flag every submission that uses your credentials. I picked up my phone, deleted Bella's last message, and placed it face down. If you're listening and you recognize this pattern, don't minimize it. Financial abuse doesn't stop at money. It reaches for identity next. And once it does, silence becomes consent. Julia didn't waste time easing us in. Your parents aren't just covering debt. They're running a private investment circle. Charles leaned forward. Explain. Harbor Point Yacht Club. She continued. Small group. Trusted names. Your parents pitched an exclusive income fund. Stable returns, low risk. My pulse thudded. There is no fund. Julia nodded. Exactly. New money paid old promises. The rest financed appearances. She pulled up a ledger. Names I recognized from childhood barbecues and holiday cards. Retirees. Couples who talked about grandchildren and travel plans. How much? Charles pressed. Initial exposure sits between $1,300,000 and $1,500,000. Julia replied. And that's conservative. The room went quiet. I stared at the list, at the neat rows that turned neighbors into victims. They used my name. I whispered. They used your reputation. Julia corrected. Your success made the story believable. My phone buzzed. A text from my father appeared, clipped and confident. Meeting with the bank this afternoon. We'll handle it. Charles glanced at the screen. They're trying to get ahead of you. They always do. Julia's fingers moved fast, pulling up transfer logs. There's more. Funds routed offshore. To where? First through the Isle of Man, she answered. Then partial transfers into Singapore. The pace increased after your last confrontation. They're preparing to disappear, Charles observed. Another message arrived. This time from my mother. Please don't embarrass us. Think of the family. I placed the phone face down. They already did. The bank conference room felt smaller than it should have. Michael Reynolds sat stiffly at the head of the table, eyes flicking between my parents and us. Edward leaned back, arms crossed, practiced calm in every line of his posture. Anne clutched her purse like it was armor. Edward spoke first, voice smooth. "This is being blown out of proportion." Michael's gaze shifted to me. "Your parents claim you approved these arrangements verbally." Charles slid the folder across the table. "Here's the proof that contradicts that claim." Julia followed, laying out timelines, access logs, transaction chains. Each page tightened the air. Anne's voice wavered. "We were trying to protect our family. You recruited others," Julia replied evenly. "You took retirement money." Edward straightened. "We built this community." I leaned forward. "Steady. You used it." Michael's expression hardened as he scanned the documents. "These accounts will be frozen immediately." Anne reached out, palm open. "That's not necessary." "It is," Michael replied, "and I'm filing a federal report." Edward's composure cracked. "You're choosing outsiders over us. I'm choosing facts." I answered. The door opened quietly. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside, their presence shifting the balance completely. Edward stood. "This is outrageous." Michael didn't look up. "Sit down." Anne's breath hitched. Bella's name flashed on my phone again, then disappeared. One officer addressed the room, voice neutral, procedural. "We're here regarding attempted withdrawals following a fraud alert." Edward's shoulders slumped, just slightly. Anne's eyes filled, not with guilt, but fear. Charles leaned close. Voice low. "This is no longer a conversation." I watched my parents as the officer spoke, as the story they'd sold for years collapsed into paper and procedure. Julia closed her laptop with finality. "The family business is finished. If you're still listening, stay with it." When power shifts this fast, the truth doesn't whisper. It moves in plain sight, and it doesn't ask permission. Time stopped moving in clean lines after that day. It stretched, folded back on itself, then lunged forward without warning. Weeks turned into months filled with meetings, statements, and quiet consequences no one warned me about. The first letter came from my firm. "Your partnership review is being deferred pending resolution. No accusation, no reassurance, just distance." Charles read it once, then set it aside. "They're protecting themselves." "I know." Another message followed, this one from a client liaison. "We're pausing the engagement until the situation becomes clearer." Clearer, as if truth needed time to ripen. Julia called that night, voice steady but tired. "The victim count is climbing." "How many?" 22 confirmed, mostly retirees. Some invested everything. I closed my eyes. Total damage. "Roughly $3,200,000, she answered, not counting emotional fallout. The bank meeting replayed in my head more often than I wanted to admit. Edward's confidence cracking, Anne's hands shaking for the first time, Bella nowhere in sight. She surfaced a week later. My phone rang past midnight. "You destroyed everything." Her voice sounded smaller, stripped of entitlement. "Not remorse, fear. You did that yourself." A sharp laugh followed. "Easy for you. You still have your career, not untouched." Silence stretched, then bitterness flooded back in. "You always had options. I had none. You had choices." I replied. "You just didn't like the cost." The line went dead. The ethics committee requested my presence soon after. Not an accusation. They emphasized a formality. Charles accompanied me, his presence a quiet anchor. One member leaned forward, fingers steepled. "You understand why this review is necessary. I understand why silence would have been easier." A nod followed. "And you chose differently." "Yes." The room held that answer longer than anything else. Outside, Charles broke the quiet. "You did the right thing. It doesn't feel clean. Justice rarely does." The day of the preliminary hearing arrived without ceremony. No cameras, no speeches. Just files stacked thick with names and numbers. Edward avoided my eyes. Anne didn't. Her voice shook as they escorted her past. We did this for our family. I met her gaze, steady and final. You did this to them. The gavel came down softly, almost anticlimactic. Walking out, Julia caught up beside me. Sentencing will take time. I can wait. She studied my face. You lost things. I kept myself. The courthouse doors closed behind us, heavy but necessary. Justice didn't feel like victory. It felt like weight redistributed, no longer crushing my chest, but still present, still real. And I carried it forward without looking back. The sentencing room filled quietly, not with spectators, but with people who had learned the cost of trust. I recognized a few faces from Julia's files, hands folded, eyes tired, dignity held together by resolve. They didn't look at my family with anger. They looked at the floor. Edward stood rigid, jaw clenched. Anne's shoulders trembled despite her effort to stay composed. Bella stared straight ahead, her expression hollow, as if denial had finally exhausted itself. The judge's voice carried no drama, just facts. Timelines, impact. Edward received 17 years. Anne 14, Bella 11. Each number landed like a door closing. Bella finally turned toward me, anger flashing through the fear. You had everything. The words echoed the lie she'd always been given. I met her gaze without heat. I earned what I had. You took what wasn't yours. Her face crumpled, not into remorse, but into loss of control. The officers guided her away before she could speak again. Anne reached out once as she passed. Her voice broke. We're still your family. I didn't move. Family doesn't steal futures. That was the last time I heard her voice. Outside, the air felt different, not lighter, clearer. Julia stood beside me, phone already buzzing with updates. Restitution is moving forward. Some of them will get their homes back. I nodded. That matters. Charles approached with an envelope. The firm finalized their decision. I didn't open it right away. They want you to help design a reporting protocol. He continued, quietly. For professionals facing family financial abuse? I let out a slow breath. That's work I can do. Later that evening, my phone lit up with one final message from an unknown number. If you ever tell this story publicly, people will listen? I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed a response I meant. If my story helps someone recognize what's happening to them, then it's worth telling. I deleted the message from my mother still sitting in my inbox, the one that ended with "We're still family." It no longer belonged to me. Strength, I learned, isn't endurance without limits. It's the ability to draw a line and stand by it. Love doesn't require silence. Loyalty doesn't mean self-erasure. And protecting others sometimes means refusing to protect those who do harm. If you've stayed with me through this, it's likely because something here felt familiar. If it did, don't ignore it. Pay attention to the patterns. Talk to someone you trust. Share your story when you're ready. I walked past the harbor that night, lights reflecting off the water I once associated with privilege and appearances. I didn't stop. Being strong never meant carrying their crimes. It meant knowing when to let them fall,